What's up, everyone? Nero here, and welcome to the weekly BuzzStream Content Roundup. Today is April 24th, Friday, 2026. This is a new series from BuzzStream where I'll be inviting guests to share and chat about the fun, strategic, wild content that we find out there on the web. Today, I am joined by Jack Chambers Ward. He is the Marketing Partnerships Manager over at Candor. You might also know him from the Search with Candor podcast and all kinds of other podcasts he's done in the past. What's up, Jack? Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Vince. Yeah, I've done a few podcasts. I know you and I have podcasted a couple of times already. We always have fun catching up and chatting, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's a couple pop culture-y pieces that I threw on here today, and I thought you were my man for this. So let's get into it. So what I'm sharing here is called this content about dead zoning. So this is on Euronews, and can this dead zoning trend be a way to improve our well-being while traveling? And typically when you see something like this, I feel like it's tied to a brand, like quite obviously tied to a brand, where a brand maybe creates something like this and then kind of jumps on and uses it as a way to like get expert commentary within the piece. But what I'm finding is the only expert comment that they had in here was from Dr. Birgit Trower, probably killing that name, but University of Queensland, Australia. I don't think Queensland is doing like digital PR for this. So I'm wondering if this is actually a trend.
They cited Mental Health UK as well as with some sources and stuff like that. I don't know if that's, like you said, I don't know if that is digital PR like consciously or if it is just somebody picking up on a trend and kind of jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah, and I'll share this too because I started digging into dead zoning here and I'm seeing that it's not actually, it's trending now, I think, because these articles are coming out. And if you Google dead zoning, you start to see other travel sites talking about dead zoning. So then trying to, like, I've seen this before, and I'll share another piece here. So Airbnb did this thing where they called it groupie getaways and show hopping. They're putting it in quotes here. Gen Z lovers are planning groupie getaways, show hopping. And it was the same deal where I looked in Google Trends, couldn't actually see a trend. So what I'm thinking is this is a strategy that these brands are doing where it's just like, we're going to come up with a term and push it out. And like, if you get it on the news, you can potentially get it to catch on. What's your take on this?
I feel like this could be one of those things where I feel quite old. I'm like, haven't people been doing like digital detoxes for a while now? Like I literally did one last year, like September last year. I basically went away for a week and just switched off from everything, considering, working in SEO, working in podcasting, how online I am. I consciously made that choice. So this isn't new to me, but I think you're right. Maybe the phrase is a conscious way of a brand owning that space. And like, we're going to call it dead zoning so we can take more ownership of it directly, I guess.
I think if anything, I've learned a new strategy, I think, out of this, which is that, just come up with a term, get your expert quotes in there that way.
Come up.
All right. Next one here I'm going to share is, so this is a Project Hail Mary Lego set that they broke a world record with trying to send it up into space. But the interesting thing about this is actually, so it comes from this company called Sent in Space. It's an agency that sends things into space for you, like as PR stunts.
I'm a huge Project Hail Mary fan, big fan of the books, big fan of Andy Weir. I have not seen the movie yet, which is very frustrating. I really want to go and see it. Heard great things. But I'm also a big space nerd. I have an astrophysics degree. So this is also my area of nerdiness as well. So yeah, I love this kind of, we'll send stuff into space to promote a brand thing. It seems so dumb and so obvious and so stupid. But like, I remember the Angry Birds one. I think they did an Oreo cookie at one point.
Yeah, there's something about these kind of bigger ones that, if you ever have ideas like this, look up if there's an agency that will do it before you try to do it yourself.
Such a specific option.
Yes. All right. Let's get into the one that I really got you on here for, the Jurassic Park perfume. Yeah, here it is. So again, now this is probably following the theme of last one. So I've seen a couple articles about this. This isn't necessarily so they said they launched a similar thing, the Dark Ride fragrance in 2015. They launched it around the Jurassic Park River Adventure. Now, so this is in conjunction with Amblin and Universal Studios. If you actually look at the website, it's actually all they do. So similar to Sent in Space, it's just all product tie-ins.
Huh. Yeah.
A little bit about Zerena the name itself comes from like the joining of like two words, and it's like nostalgia and fragrance or something. So their whole thing is like, we're going to help inspire, nostalgia with these. So this is a very up your alley. If you have $120 to spend, I feel like per bottle, I feel like you, Jack, would probably have a pretty extensive collection here.
I literally have an example from a client of mine. We did, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago now. They're like, they make like decking for like big industrial projects and things like that. And they did a April Fool's, which was, you can smell like our decking boards basically. And they put out
Love that.
Wake up and smell the decking was the whole thing.
I've seen this type of thing before. Like, here's Yankee Candle partnering up with Bruce Witherspoon, and candles that smell like things. But the perfume one, the decking, I love that. Great examples. Right. Jack, next one I'm going to share with you is from Per36. These guys do a lot of like sports visualizations, data visualizations and stuff. And this guy, she is a software engineer, but also like musician. And he started getting into this whole kind of take on AI generating music and like what it means for the industry and what it means for musicians and whatnot. And there's two things that I thought were cool. Like, I actually enjoy when people put like little quizzes and things within a post, because I do think it helps make it more shareable, but like obviously increases the engagement, right? So what we're going to do is, so he has this little, can you tell if it's real? We're going to do clip A of blues, and we're going to see if we can tell which is AI generated or not. Okay. So here you go. All right, that's A. Here we go. All right, what do you got?
I'm leaning towards B being AI generated because it's so busy. It sounds kind of weird to me.
So
I don't know.
I was thinking B is real.
Nice.
All right, here we go. Let's see. This B is a human. Interesting.
Damn.
And then anyway, you could do it with all these other ones, which was kind of cool. I got the jazz one wrong when I tried. That was the only one I had done. So who knows? My education was for
I'll
nothing,
check you out and let you know my score.
Yeah,
later
awesome.
On. But yeah, AI music has been such an interesting discussion, because I think there's every 5-10 years there's a new thing that is going to revolutionize the music. And there's a couple of really interesting video essays. I'm a big fan of YouTube and video essays and stuff. A YouTuber called Gabby Bell did a great video. I've put the link in the show notes for you, Vince, for talking about AI music, and if you can tell it's AI music, and like certain hit songs that went kind of viral are AI and people don't even know, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely an interesting. The article is great. It gets into a lot of the stuff like the AI generated tracks making money, right? Like, but they're trained off. But it's the same concept as AI generated content making money off of other people's content, and why so many publishers are suing and whatnot. So yeah, very interesting. Definitely check it out. All right. Next one I'm going to share is by this website called Pooky. What they did was the standard, again, city study thing, and it's, cheap furniture. They found they created like this scoring system, and then, but the interesting takeaway for me here is that I do kind of like this. Like, I don't necessarily love city studies, because I think a lot of them, the city index is like exists just to get links. Whereas this one, I think, exists in a way that like may actually be relevant enough to get people to visit Pooky, and it's complimentary. And I think the real value of a post like this, and the value they're adding, is like, this is valuable to readers. Like, they want to know where free stuff is, right? Versus like, I don't know, the best cities to go running or something. Like, how realistic is somebody, going to be like, oh, well, then I'll go to whatever, Portsmouth, because it's so great for running. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, and then just like city studies in general.
Yeah, in general, I agree with you that city studies often feel kind of stretched to their limits a little bit, and like fairly tangential to the actual brand. But yeah, I think this is a nice little idea of taking something that isn't literally your product, but an associated thing that would make sense for your customers to use. So I think it's a pretty good example.
Yeah. One thing I didn't see was a link on their website anywhere to this study, which, they're getting links back to their homepage, which makes sense and is valuable. But like, I always think there's a disconnect there when you're not hosting the content. I feel like you can squeeze more value, and it makes more sense to put it on there. You get more value out of putting it on there than not.
I've seen campaigns do that before where you just provide the data to the potential publishers, right? But I think you're right. Having it published on your site is always the preferred option because you own your own site, you control your own content, all that kind of stuff, right?
Well, here's another version of that, and a little different here, but it is Testicular Awareness Month, the Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, the month of April. We're closing on the end here, but this is the Oddballs Foundation did this fun campaign, showed off what they're called the crown jewels, right? The real crown jewels is their twist on this. And they showed it off at the Tower of London and had people create these little jewels out of, it's fake diamonds, right? But
I'd hope so, yeah. I like
you
brought me on for Jurassic Park and the most British sounding thing, the real crown jewels.
Another one where I could only find it on their website, on socials and not on their website, but the Oddballs Foundation does a lot of great work in the UK for raising awareness around testicular cancer. So I thought it would be a good thing to show off and a good campaign. They got a lot of coverage. I think a lot of coverage is coming on social, which when you're thinking about the audience, like maybe that's who they're trying to go with. Again, I don't think there's any reason why I wouldn't put it on here somewhere.
I think charities are an interesting case, and I find they're often either very uptight and very controlled and like, no, we can't do anything, everything has to go through legal, or they are the most fun and they want to go crazy and just do the craziest stuff. And I love being able to do that little out of the box type stuff of like, should we just get some like rhinestones and make like testicles outside House of Parliament? Like, yeah, why not? Let's go do that. Like the fun, weird, like sending into space stuff, right? Of like, why would you do that? It's like, people care, it gets coverage, like it's going to get attention. And I think something interesting you mentioned there, Vince, like social media coverage is something I think a lot of people really underestimate when it comes to digital PR, when it comes to link building. So like, it's not building you direct backlinks. You're not getting links from Instagram and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But it is still brand building. It's still brand awareness. It's still that, taking up that space in people's brains and the customers. Like, yeah, I did see that thing on Instagram the other day. And then you see them mentioned later on in an article, or they come up in an ad or whatever it is. It's that all-encompassing multi-channel approach I think a lot of people don't appreciate when it comes to digital PR stuff sometimes.
All right, Jack, let's close here with what I'm calling the end of the KitKat saga, the KitKat Heist saga. I'm sure you've heard of this.
We talked about it on Search with Candor a couple of weeks ago, funny enough. Yeah,
nice.
It came up.
So I'll just kind of give people a rundown if you haven't, but allegedly thieves have had stolen, 12 tons of KitKat bars. So that was kind of the first part. And people were like, what, is this a joke? Because it happened right around April Fool's. It was right before April Fool's, right? April. So people were like, is this a joke? But then KitKat kind of leaned into it and created this stolen KitKat tracker, which you can actually put in your like URL, or sorry, the code, UPC code or whatever, and you could see if it was stolen. And this got a lot of play. And then finally, a week later, squeezing as much as they could about this, saying they had what they're calling presidential coverage, a presidential level coverage, where they had this big convoy, bunch of SUVs carrying this KitKat truck around. And that got a lot of play. So my question to you, Jack, is, was this fake and then they kind of just ran with it, or was this all staged? Some guy was like, oh, let's pretend that we lost them and let's go with it.
I always assumed it was real for some reason. Maybe I'm just giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I think it's a good way of taking something, because this could have been a legit story, and you can take something that is potentially, obviously they lost a lot of money if it was 12 tons of KitKats, but you can spin that into something positive, right? This is a way of, like, again, trying to reclaim that bad news, trying to reclaim that, no bad PR is not, no PR is bad PR and stuff like that, right? You try and twist it in a way of like, hey, let's have fun with that and make it like track your your KitKat serial number and see if it was one of the stolen ones and all that kind of thing. And then, like you said, doing the coverage with the security thing, like the tagline there was like, when the chocolate's this good, it needs security. Our chocolate is so good, people steal it. Like, that is such a classic marketing twist on it, right? Like, that seems legit. That's somebody had that idea of just like, oh yeah, but even if this is real, we can turn it around and be like, it's so good that they had to steal it. It's like, yeah, that's a good tagline. Somebody got a raise when they came up with that tagline.
I'd love that. Your thought there. I mean, this is what, PR, I think, is in essence, is like trying to maintain your image. And, even if this was a crisis, right? Like, how can we spin it? And the idea of spin itself. And I think that is something that sometimes can get lost when we talk about digital PR.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, a lot of people from traditional PR kind of lean into that and the old school spin tactics and PR and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe us digital marketers can still use some of those old school tactics. It still works, right? Or can work, maybe.
Yeah. Well, Jack, this has been so great. Thank you so much for joining. I want to remind, I have been posting it now on the BuzzStream newsletter every week. And there's a big content roundup section. I also want to remind people, Jack and the Candor team are running a brand new conference.
This is our first time going 300 people in a theater here, like full on proper one-day conference. And yeah, it's happening in September, on the 24th of September. And you can go get tickets at searchnorwich.org. Good luck spelling Norwich. It's N-O-R. I know I pronounce it like a local, that it rhymes with porridge. It's Norwich with a C-H. Nobody gets it right. No offense, Vince, but you Americans always say Norwich, and it goes, every band I've ever seen play here is just like, what's up, Norwich? I'm like, no,
Norwich.
But it's phonetic, right? So yeah.
I live in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is spelled Greenwich. So
Greenwich,
we should know, but we don't. And there's a Norwich, Connecticut as well. So, all right, Jack, that's been great. I'll share all the show notes, all the links to all that stuff in the show notes, including the search Norwich. Jesus,
there you go.
I'm gonna do it right. So thank you, Jack, so much for your time. This was a last-minute call to Jack, and he did the call and went above and beyond. So thank you all for watching, and thank you, Jack.
Appreciate it, Vince.